Croeso i Pwyllgor Archwilio a Sicrwydd. Good morning and welcome to the Audit and Assurance Committee. Welcome to Elizabeth, to those that are attending as an independent member and attempts to observe the meeting. Feel free to contribute to the meeting. We welcome your contributions, Elizabeth. Also welcome Rhiannon as the Acting Director of Finance. Only one you have to do anyway, so sorry. Sorry. Let's off the the next meeting. Welcome to Jeff online from Wales, Audit Wales, and also to Kerry House, who I believe congratulations are in order.
Yeah.
So we may see more of you around this meeting in the future.
From September, hopefully.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. In terms of apologies for absence, Ian Emtage, Deputy Head of Procurement, but we have Lindsay on the line anyway and she'll be confident in terms of going through the procurement report agenda. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest on matters on things on the agenda today?
None received beyond what we were ready.
Very much. Yeah. Moving on to part 2, which is the consent agenda. We have 4 items on this consent agenda. The draft minutes of the meeting held on 18th of June. Are there any points of accuracy anybody wants to pick up from that meeting? We also then have the action log from that meeting. We have the information governance, the issues report, and then the review of the forward programme. So we've been asked to approve the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of June. We're happy to approve them. Yeah. Thank you. Happy to note the action log from that meeting and then note the contents of the information governance and information management reports, and then note the 2026 Audit and Assurance Committee audit work programme. You can then pick up on any matters arising from any of those papers. Does anybody have matters arising on that? I have one on the review of the forward work programme. On the programme, we're due to consider the review of SFIs and scheme delegation that's planned for this meeting. Just wondered where we are with that because it's not on the.
Thank you, Chair. There are no updates at this point to bring to the audit committee, so we didn't bring the paper here. But I guess we could have brought a paper to say there were no updates, but we didn't see that was necessary.
Okay, that's fine. Just so we're recited on it, anyway. So you're not pushing it back per se. So you've looked at it. There's nothing.
Discussed some of the issues with Welsh Government, which we previously considered in the audit committee, and then we changed to SFIs, more or less SFIs at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's important to know that. Thank you.
Great. Matters for consideration. You'll hand over to Paul for the audit reports, progress report first.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a few words around the progress report, and then I will pick up the risk management report, which is on the agenda today. So, in terms of the progress report, today it's self-explanatory. The delivery plan for this year, 26-27, we made a good start. A number of reviews, work in progress at the moment, and some planning ongoing for some others. So we are where I would expect us to be at this point in time, which is great. Section 3 of the progress report, you can see I've inserted a little section which is around reflections of last year. So just pulling together some of the metrics, number of findings that we had in the reports, rating between whether they were controlled, design, and then also there is a table which is the last table with a blue bar chart, which is showing the thematic findings for the year. So what that does is for each find that we make, we put it into effectively a bucket. Does it relate to risk? Does it relate to governance? That sort of thing. So we're just trying to get an idea of where the sort of spread of matters were arising across the organisation. And I guess what this shows is that it's fairly spread out. There isn't any particular peak really. We have 18 themes altogether, different types of themes. But This is showing it's fairly flat against those sort of 5 or 6 metrics, and so nothing particularly coming out of that reflection. And that's what I was intending to say. Just thought it might be helpful just to have a bit of a recap on last year.
And I thought that section was very helpful in terms of summarising key findings and themes. So that's a good addition for this report. It's flat out here. Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions as well before we get on to it?
No, I was pleased to see the report. You know, in terms of current reviews, were completed, but what I was pleased to see is the areas that future reports are also going to look at, which for us, you know, there would be good, a significant organisational priorities, like workforce planning, the budget setting, quality data services, etc. So, I was very pleased.
I think that reflects the wide engagement pool that you've had with the execs and others in terms of getting that programme for this year, reflecting actually the challenges that we have as an organisation. So, yes, it's looking good in terms of a good programme for us.
Key areas for us have been comparative checks, and I certainly welcome the risk management.
I think that leads into the risk management report. Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. So the risk management report is the first of the reports for the 26-27 programme, and we focus more on the directorate level risk management arrangement, specifically Education Strategy Transformation Directorate and the Nursing Health Profession Quality Directorate. I am going to take the report as read, so I won't go into it in huge detail, but I will just draw out some of the key findings. Obviously, overall, you can see from the exec summary in the front page that it's a reasonable assurance report, but there are 5 new and priority findings. Those findings link at a higher level, those finding more around strategy and risk appetite is around that alignment between what the organisation set out as its risk appetite and then how that has been played out in the risk tolerances that have been applied to the 10 domains, and the domains are like the functions of the organisation, so workforce planning, leadership, etc. And we felt there was a bit of a mismatch there. The other findings then are a bit more granular around how the risk registers are presented and how they're being managed at the directorate levels. So again, some of the key findings around that distinction between what's captured in the risk registers as an existing control and what might actually be a further action to enhance those controls. I think sometimes that can lead to a bit of confusion around what score is actually based on. Is it based on what's there already or what's going to be in place? It just sort of would be useful to have greater clarity around that. An extra point would be around that sharing of learning across directorates and not that forum of an ability to sort of share learning. Some of the other findings then were a bit more granular around what was within the risk registers of each directorate and using expected risk, current risk and inherent risk ratings, target risks, just to enhance what's there already. Yeah, those are the key things to say. None of them were high priority findings. I think we felt there was a lot of good work already there. It was just a lot of it sort of enhancing and tidying up around the edges. Didn't answer any more unless there's any questions.
Any questions or points?
So thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. Certainly welcome this report, particularly based on discussions that we've had previously in this committee and also at board around organisational approach to risk management and how we manage that. I certainly welcome the findings. They are reassuring. They do confirm to me that there is, as the findings have shown, there is a slight disconnect, and I think it's more than just around documentation. So, you know, whilst we can say the quality of some of the registers or incomplete mitigation plans or inconsistent scoring, I think what we need to be thinking about as an audit committee is how we can move beyond just recommendations around documentation to how we would engage culture of risk management within the teams.
Yeah.
So that there's a almost a culture work that takes place. Whilst we may do that at board and at committee level, embedding that so that the culture of our approach to risk management is embedded within teams that will then impact some of these issues around documentation. And then hopefully the management responses will reflect sustainability in those improvements, so that we've got that consistency across the organisation. So that's hopefully a narrative that I would like to see over and above just improvements in documentation.
And I guess that comes under the sort of section on knowledge sharing and building that culture within.
Yeah, we welcome thanks for the comments, John. We take that on board. Obviously, risk is a journey, it's not a final destination, and we need to be constantly focusing on culture. We have now got additional resource within the governance team that will come into place in the next couple of months, and this is one area that we will be focusing upon in terms of improvement and as a recommendation in terms of having having a forum going forward. Do still have the regular training sessions with teams as well. But I do hope that the impact of increasing our focus in that area will have an impact on the culture. And I think the report gives touches that we've got good foundations, but we need to build on those going forward. And it's all very well having something on paper, as you say we need to have a culture that looks at that one.
So can I ask, Chair, in terms of next steps, and we've got the response here, in terms of monitoring and then getting reassurance in terms of embedding these recommendations over the next 6 to 12 months, how will that?
So the recommendations will go on to, and the action will go on to the next iteration of the tracker, the tracker. So the tracker will capture those and report back to you in late meeting October. So.
Welcome. Part of that.
Thanks very much, Chair.
It's just been covered, thanks, Chair.
I've got a couple of points I don't mind raising here in terms of some of the actions, in terms of the format of the risk register. The date is put down as March 2027. But when you get to the responses to recommendation 4 and 5, the directorates are saying they're going to be using the updated risk register from October. So there's a bit about this. I'd rather get the risk register up and running sooner rather than later. I understand the risk management policy and everything, and the timeline of that not coming back to my life. Stand out with the broader context. But given there's a clear recommendation on the format of the register, which I accept, can't we start getting the register format out sooner rather than later? People to use it, and then that 4 and 5 action will actually come in line.
Okay, I take that on board, but the format is based on our policy. So I think as a compromise, I think what we should do is bring forward the dates of the policy so that we're all aligned, and we on that basis that's in accordance with the conversations.
I assume that's comfortable with I think the board development section in August on risk, because there's quite a lot of discussion there. So hopefully that will also inform that, and therefore, yes, if you can bring it forward, you've got the capacity to bring it forward. I certainly welcome that.
So
if there's an issue, you can flag it back.
We'll bring a clear policy to the committee.
That would be great. The other one was on that knowledge sharing. When I looked at the response to it, there's reference to explore the options, and then it's this may include. So I feel there's still a bit of work, and it's not exactly clear what exactly the actions are going to be in that field. For us to understand and to try going forward.
Yeah, I take that on board, and as was alluded to earlier, we have additional resources within the team.
Yeah.
So within the updates in the track
there'll be a clear road actions there.
Provide a clear update. So
that's fine. That everyone else is comfortable with that. Yeah. Those are a couple of points I wanted to pick up. But yeah, it is a good report, and I think there is still work that you want to continue on it and embedding that throughout.
It's a continual piece of work. Yeah.
I know, yes. So, so the committee is asked to note the internal audit progress reports for assurance and note the risk management internal audit reports for reasonable assurance. Yeah. Thank you very much. We now hand over to Helen and the team in Audit Wales. Thank you.
Okay, so first on the agenda, so we have a committee update. So I'll start off with the financial audit update, and then Bethan is going to take the performance audit work update. So as you recall, at the last audit committee, you recommended the accounts for approval to the board for 25-26. They were subsequently approved at the board on the 26th of June, and the Auditor General signed them with their clean opinion on Friday, the 27th of June, and they were also laid at the Senate that same day as well. So that concluded our audit work for 25-26. Since then, I've got the team together and we've had a post-project learning session to think about what went well with the audit and what could maybe be further improved for next year. So we've collated all that, and we're going to meet with Martin and the team who will have done a similar exercise internally to compare notes and see where we can go for next year. But just to say that the audit this year went really well. The team worked well to answer our responses within the required timescales and things. So it's more about tweaking kind of further improvements rather than any big issues that we encountered along the way. So look forward to meeting Martin and the team in September.
Thank you. Well, I welcome that follow-up loop that you have with Martin and the team. It gives us assurance on that work. But it was a good piece of work last year. So I know you're just building on strengths.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll go through the performance audit updates. If I can start with the structured assessment for 2026. That is underway now. We have just finished scoping it. The audit brief will be out in the next couple of weeks. I have already met with David to explain some of the changes. There will be a shift from last year's structured assessment to look more at the impact of the work that has been undertaken in the last year. So we'll be reporting back on that. I think we propose November board if everything aligns and we can get all the interviews in and everything done quickly. So we're looking to do that on quite quickly. Our next piece of work will be our stakeholder engagement piece of work. We'll be looking to do that in Q4. We'll update you with the project brief and dates for that closer to the time when we have completed the scoping. The other piece of work to draw your attention to today is the deep dive into digital systems, and you'll see my colleague Jeff is here today to present that report, which is next on the agenda. If I could just draw your attention to, it'll be page 8 or page 42 in your pack as well, of the other relevant publications. There are some links in there to other audit findings and reports which we've published recently on our website, and I would encourage everybody to click on and have a little read of some of those which we think might be relevant to the wider system and pressures. I'm happy to take any questions on that update, Chair.
Thank you, Bethan.
Can I just add as well? I think the report was done before we issued the NHS Wales Finances Data Tool update for 5.6 as well, which summarises the outturn for each of the bodies. So you have a look on the publications page and data analytics tools, it should be on there as well. So
Thank you, Helen. Any questions on this part of this update? So usually updates to know where we stand on it. So if not, we'll move on.
Can I just check? In terms of the stakeholder engagement, whilst I note within the document the focus of the work, will the scope be shared prior to it being agreed? To what extent will the scope of that, that's a key piece of work for us, these stakeholders.
Yes, will be shared.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to pick that up. So we'll be scoping that after the summer now, and we'd be really happy to engage and have a chat with anybody who'd be interested to feed into that. And it might be something that we can pick up if we chat through our structured assessment meetings as well. We will share the scope in draft ahead of finalising it. But if there are specific thoughts or ideas that you'd like to feed in, I'd be more than happy to catch up ahead of that, to pull any ideas that anybody's got.
Sure.
So I know I'm not here for that.
No,
but
that's fine. I welcome it.
Beth, I really welcome that, because we've had an ongoing piece of work under our comms and engagement framework with a dedicated focus on stakeholders over the last 18 months. And we've also already done an initial conversation with stakeholders, and we've got a procurement to do a full stakeholder audit and review and questionnaire. So linking in, so it's stakeholders' experience of joined up approach. So those different elements would be really welcome. So yes. Pick up with myself and Dawn around what that looks like would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on our radar, so I'll make sure that we link in with you, so there's no duplication, and any work we do is complementary. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for teeing up that conversation. Helpful to know. If there's no other points on the update report, can we move on to the digital transformation paper, please? Over to you, Jeff, I believe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bwrdd Pawb. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity to present our sort of key findings from this piece of work. It's probably worth reminding everyone that this was a thematic piece of work that was undertaken across all Welsh health bodies, so individual bodies would have had reports similar to yourselves. In very, very broad terms, the work sort of focused on HEIW's approach to digital transformation and how that was supporting service improvement. And to sort of understand that, I guess, in a bit more detail, we looked at digital strategy, digital leadership, skills development, and how you manage risks around digital infrastructure, cyber resilience, and artificial intelligence. So it was quite a broad piece of work. In terms of the status of the report, it's been agreed with management for factual accuracy, and then I guess today is really focusing on how HEIW is sort of responding to our 4 recommendations, which are included in Appendix 2. So, Chair, can I assume that people attending today rather have sort of read the report? I was only going to focus therefore on...
You can assume that the red every paper on the agenda. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I was just going to pull out a couple of key messages, if that's okay. And the first one really was around the sort of strategic landscape for digital. So again, this is a very sort of positive message that we, in terms of our findings, you know, there was a clear defined digital ambition, strong board ownership and oversight of the digital and data strategy. However, probably more work to do to develop quantified digital data benefits, and we know that there's work ongoing on that. And this piece around the emerging risk around artificial intelligence, having some sort of clear assurance around that. So that was the first key point. The second one was, you know, recognizing that you've made some good overall progress on delivering your digital ambition. However, we've sort of got a caveat to that, which is actually that sort of ambition might be constrained in the future if the risks around sort of long-term resourcing, managing digital capacity are not adequately addressed. So, you know, positive, but actually a caveat that, you know, that ambition could be constrained. The third key message was around HEIW's sort of dependence on some of its partners to deliver aspects of its digital ambition. So a good example of that is the National Digital Capability Framework used by health boards. Actually, at the moment, there's very limited use of that, with I think we said around 2% use by health boards. So we're aware that HEIW is taking steps to improve that, but some of those actions are still very much at an early stage, and so, you know, will only be effective if, you know, fully supported by its partners. So that sort of dependency, you know, it puts a risk factor, I guess, in the sort of ambition around that digital capabilities framework. And the final message really was around the delivery delays in HEIW's primary digital infrastructure refresh program, CODI, which I'm sure that you're aware of, and have been well reported. So we didn't have an issue with that. But we were recognizing that those delays have, you know, resulted in missed deadlines, additional costs, and potential wider reputational impact. Again, we're aware that you're learning the lessons from that delay, from the delays in that programme, and we'll come on to the recommendations in a moment. But it will be important to continue to embed those into the HIW digital issues, those sort of lessons. So those are the sort of key messages. I just wanted to update you very quickly on some additional products that we're developing as a result of the local digital transformation work. So the first piece is an insight piece that we're calling, and that will be published over the next few months. That will draw together the sort of key messages from our local work across the NHS family. And then there's this second piece of work, which is a very short national review, which at the moment is most likely going to consider some of the national digital programme delivery, and that's likely to be published around December, January time. So there's these other sort of broader pieces of work that are ongoing that I thought you might be interested in hearing about, albeit they're not ready for publication just yet. Chair, that sort of concludes my high-level summary. Happy to take any questions, or I don't know if it's Sian or Matthew are going to pick up the individual responses in terms of the recommendations, the 4 recommendations that are included in Appendix 4. But happy to take take questions or hand over. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Before I hand over to Sian and Matthew, this is a bit about understanding the process of signing off the documentation, particularly around the findings. And are you comfortable with all the findings? And does it fairly reflect where we are? Because I had a couple of issues on some of the wording, and now I'll get back to that in a minute. But I was just wondering how this, has it been signed off by the exec team before this went through?
Yeah, so we wrote a covering paper, and that paper went to exec team on the 6th of April. And this, I think the difficulty with only receiving this audit report is you're not getting the narrative on everything else that is happening in parallel, I think. So when this went to the executive team, they've had a full debrief and a plan of the outcome of, for instance, the technology work that we're doing on digital skill, the relaunch of that programme, the new approach, the engagement. So they were furnished with a broader view of all the stuff that is going on to answer these areas of further work that is required. So that paper went in April before we submitted the management responses with the programmes of work that would be supporting this work. And they were comfortable that they addressed the details within each of those areas. And the one on digital skills, I can go into more detail on that, and some of the resources and the capability. Members here will be aware that is an ongoing issue. It is a corporate risk that we have on the corporate risk register in relation particularly to data and analytics. As the execs felt well cited on the risk, the immediate and the longer term mitigation, but also experience that from a financial position, it is a fine balance of finding that resource, and we haven't got the magic pot at the end of the rainbow to answer all of these questions, and the decisions on priorities and allocation within the grander scheme of the organisation. So yeah, the full paper did go to before submitting the management.
That's helpful, because we're reading this code without having that context, because there are things raised in the paper. The context is there, we understand a bit more, but it's all not this.
Yeah,
in the paper, isn't it?
Yeah, more than happy to share that detail. Just the way that this came from in that wasn't.
It might be helpful to share with the committee members that paper, just to put information. I find it quite very interesting to understand, particularly as there's a reference to actions that arise for that.
Yeah, we can share that, and we can share the update that we gave on the digital skills, because I think that is something that has shaped significantly different since this has gone in. So the report, as it reads at the moment, says we understand that you're doing work. The report that we gave to the exec team is this is the outcome of the review that technology did. This is what we're doing about it. This is the plan going forward. So more than happy to share those things.
Sure.
Yeah. And obviously answer any more questions that come out, because they would be retrospective.
Yeah. In terms of a couple of things I just wanted to pick up from the report before we go to the recommendations. There's a bit in there on cyber resilience where it refers to our residual corporate risk score lower than many of the health bodies, as it considers steps its management effective, and it feels wrong to all the discussions we've been having on cyber risks and everything else.
It's back up now to equal to everyone else.
Yeah, so but given that's going to be this is a document that's going to be published. Does that sentence need to be updated to where we are in terms of?
So, sorry, just to remind you before we go into any detail around cyber risks meeting.
Yeah, well, no,
okay, thank you.
It's a broader aspect rather than the detail.
Broader part.
Yeah.
I don't know actually on a technicality point, because if we were doing that, I'd rewrite a lot of it already. So it wouldn't just be cyber that would be rewritten, it'd be the whole section on digital skill as well. So at the point in time of writing, this of course was the position of where we are, but the cyber position does move on a sometimes daily, but from a reporting perspective, definitely a monthly position. So I'm sure with all audits, and Jeff, looking at you, there's a caveat that says correct at time of
at a point of time.
So,
yes, indeed.
yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And good to hear that things have moved on, you know, in terms of the way that you're describing the response to the recommendations, albeit there probably was that overlap between you working on things as we were publishing the report. So conscious of that, but at a point in time, you're absolutely right.
There was one of the few others, but I'm not going to some of the sort of the detail on it. There's a reference in paragraph 29 about, which I think is anecdotal rather than evidence. I'm uncomfortable when anecdotes are in the documents about. However, we understand some health boards have suggested low completion rates, partly due to staff questioning its usefulness. To me, it's anecdote, and is it really hard evidence on here on there? Because I think it sort of puts us in a sort of slightly bad light, but I'm not sure it's true. I don't know.
So off the back of getting to the point of proving whether this was evidence or anecdote, we commissioned Technology to work with us off the back end of 25 into 26, and they conducted stakeholder engagement workshops all across Wales with over 100 people attending to get the real feedback.
Yeah.
So to understand what the issues with the capability framework were, what else do we need to do, why was some people doing it, finding it useful, and others weren't. So I do agree that that is anecdotal, but we have subsequently gone out and carried out as a really in-depth engagement to understand and reshape the programme on the back of that engagement. So there are things that people would find more useful if it was. We now have a plan to implement those things. It's not, yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. I'm mindful of it because this is ultimately going to be a published document on Audit Wales' website that we are comfortable what's been published on us.
Yeah, and I think when we set up the digital capability framework, it was never mandated. It was never said that everyone had to do it. I think we've made an assumption that everyone in Wales should have completed it, and therefore we're getting assessed against the 2%. That was never its original purpose, to be a mandated tool that everyone did complete. It was something that was a useful source of understanding the digital skill. But as I've said, we've now moved on to looking at how do we make this more helpful, how do we feedback and offer alternatives, and we've transformed that programme into a digital transformation workforce programme as opposed to just being about the DCM. And also Vicky presented this week to digital directors the revised programme. They were very supportive and already been in touch, for instance, to say, how do I respond to my Wales audit response using the things that you've got? So we've made those links off the back of some of this work as well.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because in some respects, reading this and the outcome and the management response, you know, I've always I looked at it and thought, how can this committee have, you know, assurance that the digital investment is translating into measurable improvements and the benefit realisation that, you know, mentioned earlier. I think, but we're not getting that sense from this, and it's not published. So there's an awful lot of work. My concern is a document is being published where there's an awful lot of work around those measurable outcomes, and it's not being shown in our management response. How do we fare about that updating, or is that a moment in time when it goes out as published?
Well, the thing is, we need to sign it off as a committee before Audit Wales go on to application type of thing. So I think there is merit in us considering about where we are now. I think findings are the findings as it was then, but in terms of the recommendations and the actions, given I think there's a lot of work's been done since then, is it worthwhile that the actions are clearly firmed up more specifically? So give that assurance. But the other aspect of it then is also then we've got something to track on the audit track, because at that point some of the recommendations aren't clear to me. It says we'll address these things, but actually for assurance for us, is like, well, actually, what's the definitive ones? Because that's what we're going to be tracking. That's what Audit Wales will sort of review in due course as such. So if we can pick up on the recommendations elements, John.
So I went through this report, so I certainly acknowledge the work that Audit Wales have done. We have invested a significant amount as a board in our digital and data strategy, and as we know, it dictates much of our strategic decision making and our operational processes. And if there's anything that gives me anaphylaxis or tachycardia in this area, I have to say, because the risks that's associated with it, and that may well be a level of my own ignorance, but it's certainly an area that we as an audit committee should be keeping a very close eye on. Sian has answered my question around the digital capability framework, etc. So that was certainly helpful. I'm uncomfortable about the narrative around resource limitations and our ability to deliver on some of these recommendations, or perhaps the level of which. It would be interesting to see how we manage capability and resources within the organisation. And the other question I would ask is, I know the recommendations and we've got a response, and I concur with how we should be responding and the narrative being a little bit more detailed, and particularly needs to be more around benefit realisation, which is the point that has been made. But to what extent are these themes, particularly around AI and the risks associated with that, are those themes that have been picked up with other NHS organisations, and to which there will be an all-Wales response, particularly like the resource implications? Are there going to be potential for there to be an all-Wales response in order to support organisations? And if all is it the case that we as an audit committee, we have to look at this for ourselves within, even though others may well be facing similar issues, particularly I'm thinking around AI.
Chair, would you like me to come back in on that?
Be grateful, thank you, Jack.
So yeah, as I think it's John, wasn't it? Who,
yes.
I can't quite see. Sorry, from the camera angle, but so as I said at the sort of end of my very brief sort of key findings introduction, there are two pieces of work that we're doing which will draw together some insights across the work that has been undertaken at all health bodies on digital transformation, and I am almost certain that AI will feature within that, and that will draw out key themes, key messages. Where we've done insight work before, we've had some key questions for Welsh Government as well. Whether or not the insight piece ends up with key questions for Welsh Government, I don't know, but certainly that's some of the insight pieces that have come out recently from us have positioned questions for Welsh Government. So watch this space. That should be coming out in the next couple of months. There's also a smaller national piece of work which is looking across the system, looking at specifically at programme delivery around key national programmes. So again, I'm sure that will draw out some of the concerns that you might have around risk, around financing, etc. But it is focused on sort of national national delivery of key national systems. So there's more work to do in this space, which may go some way to sort of I guess answering some of the concerns that you might have around the sort of national system-wide challenges.
Yeah.
So I wonder, Chair, if Sian can answer the issue in terms of risks associated with our ability to deliver on these audit recommendations. Are we confident that we've got the resources in order to deliver what's expected?
The recommendations as they're featured in this report I am comfortable that we have action in place, that these were already highlighted into our plan or our strategy. So the reason that I think these are already integrated into our delivery of our IMTP, either for this year or as part of the strategy work. So I don't think there are any surprises in what is identified here in relation to the recommendations. However, I want to caveat that with our wider ambition and the demand on digital and data is exceeding our current ability to respond more broadly.
Yeah.
But for these things that are identified here, we have methods or programs in place. We'd already had those in place, and you will have seen them in different areas to respond to these recommendations.
There's a couple of things in context of all of this. That digital and data strategy is on the board development session in August. There's also the risk that's highlighted in the corporate risk register later on, technically. So all this is all shared with. So, but going back to a broader point, because there's the points just raised about resourcing. I think that's a common one. If you look at the other transformation in others, I've been looking at some of the other organisations, so that I expect the certain things, and certainly resourcing is going to be an issue on digital for all organisations, NHS Wales, to be honest. And I know business cases are being developed and there's other things. So it's about things that are in our grip to be able to take forward. And there are going to be privatisations inevitably. Yeah. That's the system we're in, to be honest, isn't it? So yeah, I welcome the reports in terms of what's there. It quite rightly should put challenges for us, and it does need to highlight the things that we need to make progress on. That was the question I had really on the recommendations, because Sean mentioned things were a snapshot of time. We are expected to sort of track the actions on here, and some of the actions you've got in place, but it's not explicit to me what's in here. So I don't know whether it's worthwhile. Is there an opportunity to refresh that table that reflects that the actions that are now in place? So that's something those are the things that are being taken forward. That's my request to the chair of the committee. But would that be helpful to you? It would certainly be helpful to us, Sean, but I don't want to create things for it.
Yeah, I don't think that was the ask of what we were. But I can understand. So I think for a publicly facing document that gets published, the level of detail here is really high level and is appropriate for a public audience. I think for you to have that confidence, almost of like a paper to support this from us, would have probably been the ask that would have been helpful to put this alongside, so you could have had that level of detail in one place, because you've had it in lots of different places. So more than happy to put that into a paper for you here, so you can track that and turn that into exactly what that means.
Yeah, I will ask David to liaise with Alex on this one, because when you look at the reports for other organisations, they've gone a bit more specific details in what they've published. Whether we want to go down that route or not, it's not for me to commit on organisation. But I think we just want to test how comfortable Alex is about that, because it always look a bit vague in terms of responses compared to some of the other organisations in the responses to recommendations. I'm only really nervous about it because it is something that's published on the Audit Wales website. Maybe I'm too nervous.
We can rewrite the management. It's not that we haven't got all the plans.
Just
replicating those in other forums, because it's coming through the performance report, it's coming through the IMTP, it's coming through the annual reports to board, and it's coming through the deep dives, it's coming through project board. So detail's not a problem, we can put that a revised version in.
Bethan, sorry, Bethan.
No, just to say, Chair, that I think we really welcome this discussion. This has been really, really helpful. And I agree. I think there's probably split the difference here around a little bit more information in the management response form for your purposes would be helpful. I suppose my query is, would you like us to hold publication on the website until you have the level of detail that you're happy with? Because normally we'd send it for publication straight after committee, but I'm happy to hold it until you've refreshed it, as Sian has just suggested.
Yeah, it's grateful if you could hold it, and then
absolutely.
If that discussion's taking place with Alex and with David about whether we refresh the management response in the documents, or do we handle it with a separate update to come to us? I'm not precious either way. I think we need to, yeah.
I'll raise that with Alex, and what I suggest that we do is that if we do agree to provide further information within those responses, we'll circulate that response to members of the committee prior to
that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Okay. There's no other points we want to pick up on this at this stage.
I think that discussion is a process. As a committee, we've had assurance from Sian that the processes are there. It's just a matter of the documentation in order to support work going forward. It's absolutely right. You're right, Chair, to be is getting a process in place for that.
So if we could, committee's asked to note the progress report, and we're asked to note the Audit Wales digital transformation reports. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sian, for coming on to this. Thank you, Sian. Yeah. We can move on to 3.3, the procurement compliance report.
Thank you, Chair. Morning all. I won't go into the detail of the report, but just to give you a high-level overview, we are reporting 4 single quotation actions, 3 single tender actions, 4 contract extensions, and just the 1 policy breach file note. Just to add to the file note as well, the owner of that file note has accepted an invitation to attend an upcoming procurement training session. Excellent. And happy to take any questions on any of the detail in the report. If anybody has any questions.
Just sorry, I'm just going back on my own notes now. No, I don't have any.
I haven't got any questions other than, I think it's positive to note that, each exception has been reviewed. There's a documented rationale around that. Follow-up actions are in place. You've said how things are going to be responded to in terms of exceptions. So, that's what gives us assurance that where we've got the report in, there are actions that today and they seem suitable. I have no questions. It is actually.
Yeah, I know procurement is part of the control paper on the agenda. I think there may be broader issues about what's on contract and what's not on contract, and how we deal with things going forward. That's that agenda item rather than here, but yes. So we're, I think our members are asked to note the report for assurance. Thank you very much. Section 70 of the Procurement Act.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of background on this paper coming to this committee. Last month, Welsh Government issued a reminder to all NHS Wales organisations responsibilities under Section 70. I think we've covered that a little bit in the committee in the past. I came through our Chair, Chris Jones, who asked for confirmation we were compliant with the regulations, and subsequently, I think Gay asked for a paper to be bought just to confirm that was happening. So the paper is here today for that reason. Just the aim of the Act is to increase transparency of public expenditure, so they are asking us to publish more information on the website. Specifically, we need to publish any details of any payments over £30,000 that are made within any public contract. So it applies from the 1st of April for England, and will apply later this year for us, for the date to be determined. But we are getting ahead of the game if we can. We do currently have a process in place to prepare similar information as part of the Information Commissioner's Office report, which we publish on the website. So we have processes in place to do this currently. We publish it on a monthly basis. So we're just going to enhance that, set out in section 3 what we plan to do, how we're going to prepare the information, and it will be available within the timescales required. Speaking to Lindsay this week, a number of organisations have suggested that the ICO information we publish may be acceptable for the purposes, because it's over what's needed, because we publish everything. But we're not sure on that yet, but we're waiting for confirmation. But until then, we will carry on with the process we're proposing, and then we will update if needed. As a quarter one, there is nothing for us to report further with Lindsay, and so there's nothing for us to do at the moment, but we have a process in place that will be able to publish information as required. It's just an extra step in what we currently do, so we will be compliant.
I was just wondering, there's nothing gone through today, so I was just wondering if and when things do come through, is the intention of including it in a report to us, is it worthwhile as society, even just to see, but as an example, I don't know what it means at the moment, this type of thing. So is it worth adding to the procurement report type of thing? Just sort of gives us reassurance. And exactly, I'm just going to get regular thing.
Yeah. Actually, I think we could add it as just a note to the procurement report if there's nothing to report. We can include the link to the website as well, our website, and to the central database when we're using that, or if you need to use that. So yeah, we can do that. Yeah. It currently is a list of payments. I'm not sure how useful it is. But, yeah, it's an interesting one, but
it's about understanding the process and the reassurance. Even if some notes on each report saying, well, there's nothing to report this quarter, that's fine. It's just or if it is, whatever you want to.
Absolutely, yeah, we can do that. It's fine.
Any other questions on this one? If not, members are asked to note the report for insurance. But yeah, we are. Sorry.
Can I make a comment? Somebody somewhere is going to upload all these, some journalist somewhere is going to upload all these payments and find a trend. And to be honest, I mean, the prospect of publishing a list of every payment over 30,000, I can't honestly see the use of it unless somebody looks for a trend internally, which you could probably do in a spreadsheet fairly easily. And I don't know whether that is actually what needs to be done. Now, if that's a load of work, forget it. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit. What's the purpose of it? What are they trying to show by publishing everything over 30,000? Is it that they want to see it spent in Wales or locally, or is it about fraud? In which case you won't see it if you just look at the payments, you'll have to look for patterns.
And my understanding would be it's about transparency of public procurements, so that other suppliers can see what's happening and where does it go. I note your concern because something like the Taxpayers Alliance, you could see that because the way they do look at exact pays, you could see them looking for trends and using the data. So there is a risk of transparency in that context, but I think we have to comply per se.
I'm not saying we don't do it. I'm just saying, is there any quick fix added value?
Yeah.
And there may not.
Yeah.
It's interesting what the website is.
I'm not asking you to do anything.
Yeah.
In my powers.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've noted that, and we can move on to the counter fraud progress report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report just covers the work we've done from 1st of April until the 24th of July. It follows the same setup that we've done in all previous reports. I suppose to highlight that we're probably ahead of curve in terms of dates we provide the organisation that we have in the past. It's probably to do with some additional proactive work in relation to the fraud risks and a proactive exercise that's ongoing in relation to attendance at courses by people who are on under training that's ongoing at the moment. So you'll provide a report on that when it's done, but we are probably ahead of where we normally are in terms of days for that. Awareness work, we are continuing to do the awareness sessions for the organisation. We've got a specific one for the digital directorate to try and boost the numbers in a targeted way there. We had one session which we had on the 28th of July, but we had 27 people attend. The next one is the 10th of September, so the link is there. They also share with their partners to boost numbers. That would be great. And then obviously that will all get uploaded onto ESR, and I will provide in the next meeting hopefully a breakdown to show where all the directorates and everyone is in terms of compliance with that. We've had some more intelligence bulletins, as we tend to do every session. There's nothing to highlight if any issues or concerns are raised from those. And in relation to the risk work that's ongoing, hopefully we might have got it to this committee, but it's a large piece of work really in terms of looking at all the fraud risks of the organisation, moving it onto a brand new template for the government accountable preparation template, and then that part has been done, but we now need to get it to all the relevant people within the organisation for them to review before we get it public, if you like. So that is ongoing, and again, I'll bring that back. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was, I've certainly got positive assurance. And just I was thinking when I was reading it, and it might even be a sort of a future thought really, but do we have any evidence that awareness activity is actually changing behaviours of fraud?
I suppose we've got the annual report would see that there has been an increase in number of referrals over the past few years, as we've seen the increase in referrals, the increase in attendance and training sessions. So we've seen that sort of increase and more people coming forward to ask us questions. I suppose is that part? I
just think of it with capturing in the future, really, just to sort of close the gap.
Yeah.
And it's not for today, but it is something I was thinking of. Thank you.
There is an audit committee chairs group which I attend. At the last meeting, there was a reference, a copy was circulated of the fighting fraud strategy, which has been published and launched by, signed off by Jacqueline in the Welsh Government. And I just wondered when would that be coming to the committee? I assume we'll need to see what the findings of that. I assume there will be a covering circular that'll come through. So it's not for today, but I'm guessing it will come back in due course, and the actions that need to arise. I'll just flag it up to the agenda.
It has been published. It should have come to the comms team of all the organisations to post to. If that hasn't happened, I put it on my SharePoint, and I can share the details with the comms team. So I'll just double check with Martin probably afterwards. It just come out for that, and there is to be a fighting fraud strategy delivery plan, which is coming, which is going through the processes of the counter fraud leads group to show what that strategy is actually going to mean and how that might affect what we do. So once that delivery plan has come through, and
am I right to assume that there will also be a circular from Welsh Government to Zulia's circular on counter fraud?
I can ask. I got a meeting with Cheryl, the new head of the Council of Service Wales, later this month. I can check with her. She's working with Welsh Government.
So it's a future agenda. But thank you for the report, the update report. So we are asked to note the report for assurance. Thank you. Then losses and special payments.
Yeah, thank you. This is a paper setting out the losses special payments to the 31st of July this year. Once again, it's only salary overpayments we're reporting. We've currently made cases outstanding with a total of £15,400. The report does say 9, but one has subsequently been cancelled as it was queried by the individual. whilst the numbers are low, we've had a disappointing increase in the number of cases this year. You've seen on the chart, there's been 9 so far, with which matches what was in total last year. The values are very small, or relatively small. They start at £19 up to upwards, but and we have recovered 6 cases fully already, so it's not a huge issue. But there obviously is an admin burden in doing this. We are trying to reduce those, as we've discussed many times. So disappointed with the reasons really. They are delays, some of them delays with HAW managers sending information to payroll in time, which, considering the tools we've got available now, they're fairly easy to use. They're accessible. They pre-populate a lot of the information. It is a little bit frustrating. So I shared the names with the people team, and we will sit down and work out what we need to do. There's no repeat offenders, which may be a better option, because it means there's one problem. But I think we need a little bit more communication. Get some training out there. I'm not sure what the people team will suggest, but I'm working with them to sort of to resolve that, because we don't want the numbers to increase, because I said it is a small, but it does add up in the admin burden we don't want. So we'll work on that, and we'll feed back to future audit committees on progress on that. But hoping the number will reduce when we can do something to increase the awareness.
So, Chair, my question has been answered really, Matt. And I think what we need to see as an audit committee is what is going to be put in place to prevent these simple things. So that's been answered. My other question, Chair, if I may, we get this paper. I don't know how often at audit, but we certainly. I'm not sure if it's every audit, but it's quarterly, right? Okay. And you rightly each time know the number of issues and what's been put in place to recover the money, etc. What I would like to know is the trend for recovery an improving trend, or actually, once we've got these processes in place, we're not actually getting anywhere, because either the problem is getting worse, or we're not expediting things quick enough. We get a snapshot each time. This is what's in place. We've recovered X amount, but is this position getting better over time, or are we just saying static? If that's the case, then we need to be looking at the process that we've got in place to recover.
Yeah, annually I do bring that sort of the trend analysis. It is useful to expand that to each of the reports. I'm happy to do that. Just as I said, the seven we've this year we've recovered 6 of the 9 already. So it's quite okay. I think the bigger issues are the older cases are still outstanding. We're having trouble clearing, but I'm happy to update the report with it.
That's with the data then.
It's the older ones are problematic, and they're with our debt collection agency to try and recover. That takes time. But yeah, if you'd like me to
no, that's fine. As long as we're getting it, I'm sure as a committee we'd look forward to that being 0 with the right process.
It's anecdotally, we're speaking to colleagues, and our numbers are particularly small compared to certainly the health boards. Obviously, they're multiple sizes bigger, but and it's easier for us to look at individuals, I think, on that basis. But yeah, it'd be lovely to be 0.
Thank you, Chair.
Maybe lovely to be 0, but in reality, it's always been an issue for decades and decades. So if that's not it's the late information from early that's coming through. And what I think might be useful next time is that I know you've had a session with equals team. It'd be useful to have, if they could add a note to your next report, say what actions they are taking, so that we can see that coming through. I know it's something that just needs to be on top of all the time. So we'll probably never solve it comfortably, but it's about best endeavours, and it's sort of there. So yeah, it'd be useful to have provide a note to attach to your next report. Absolutely. Thank you. So there's no other questions. Members asked to note the report for information. On my agenda, or on the agenda, we've got a break. Shall we have a break for 5 minutes? If that's if anybody needs it, or we've got 5 minutes break then, so 20 past. get back to part 3 of our agenda, which is the matters for consideration, and HW financial control. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've shared with the committee the correspondence that we received from the Director General in respect of the grip and control arrangements, and that was that came through our NHS Wales chairs and was sent to the Chief Executive as well. There was a tool shared with us that had been developed by the Finance Delivery Unit, part of NHS Performance and Improvement, using sort of a number of best practice models, and I suppose developing a tool for organisations to be able to self-assess their control environments internally against this control frame. And so it was originally intended to identify areas of strength and then areas identifying improvement as well. So we have completed the self-assessment, and that is included as an appendix to the report for information for the committee. We feel that we have a reasonably strong control environment across the domains of finance, workforce and procurement. As with anything like this, there are opportunities to improve. So we've identified a range of opportunities to improve our control environment, and they're also detailed and included in the report. The self-assessment was taken through our joint exec team and DDG meeting on the 14th of July, and we are required to submit this information to performance improvement as soon as we can, I suppose. We've brought it to Audit Committee for information. I appreciate in the report it says endorse. I think that is possibly too strong. I think we're bringing it for information at this point. I think it needs to be a live document that we use through the year. I think there's a suggestion that internal audit may want to review our self-assessment, and obviously the implementation of our improvements will be live through the year. So we brought it to Audit Committee to share transparently the work that we've undertaken to date, enable you to comment on what we've included, and then maybe but consider our improvement plan through the rest of the year. Okay, we'll stop there.
Thank you, Chair. So I thought the paper was very helpful and very honest, and there are clear actions that are in place, key actions that we're looking at. It's 15, I think it is in total, across finance, procurement, workforce, etc. What came across to me is that a lot of them relate to issues where we've got current manual procedures in place in order to try and ensure compliance, and they're not documented. That relates to some of the examples we're seeing where there's been non-compliance. The dates are noted as December 26 and March 27. So my question is around monitoring the delivery. So whilst I accept what's been put in place around actions and knowledge, process, compliance to enable grip, to reassure ourselves, it is good that we've done self-assessment. I'm presuming that self-assessment will be subject to some sort of external scrutiny, or will it, if that's Welsh Government or not, and how will we be monitoring that in terms of an audit committee, particularly for the dates that have been given, what processes are we agreeing to? Accepting that it's for information, but I think as an audit committee, we would want assurance that they are being put in place, that we can track them, and that I, as an IM, have got assurance that we have got that necessary financial grip that has been externally benchmarked as well.
Yeah. So the analysis is due to be submitted to performance and improvement. It's not completely clear at this point in time what they are actually going to do with it, but I suppose internally we can use this as a document to track those improvements, and we can bring back to a future audit committee you know, so it's evidence that those improvements had been made. And then I suppose if there is scope within the internal audit plan for this year, then potentially there could be a review of the self-assessment and that we've actually put those actions in place. I think that sort of is the full circle for us, regardless of what NHS performance and improvement they're going to do. Just, I suppose, to come to us, we've got, you know, doing improvements. I think the health boards have hundreds. So, you know, the process around how that is going to be dealt with nationally, I think we all need a bit of clarity on that.
That's it. Thank you.
I think there's we shouldn't underestimate the importance of this. Clearly, it's part of the new regime in Welsh Government. In context of the public accountability meetings and everything else in there. So you've given assurance that the exec team have signed this off in terms of the contents. It is going to be something that's going to be a focus on. We'll get back to in a minute. So I think it's important for us to be seen that we are tracking the actions, and I think it would be helpful that it is through the Audit and Assurance Committee, even if it means that somebody in the public accountability means to say later on we are tracking this to the Audit and Assurance Committee type of thing. So that's an important point. You raised the point about NHS P&I, and we'll be reviewing it. The feedback that the Audit Committee chairs had was that internal audit are going to be doing something. They weren't sure at the time what it's going to do on a national basis to feedback to NHS P&I. So there's a bit about, and I know we'll have the answers today. I think that's why it's going to come. I think it's going to come back as a regular agenda item for quite a bit in terms of what is NHS P&I going to do? Are they going to look at it nationally? Are they going to be national lessons learned, or are they going to be individuals as well? I don't know. What is internal audit going to do on a national basis? What are they going to do on a local basis? So I think it will need to be coming back. But I guess at this point in time, it's going to go into a cloud, and we don't know what's going to come out of it at this point of time, isn't it?
And set ourselves out so that hopefully we can answer all of those questions in the best way that we can.
So can I just check, Chair? Is financial control a good part of the audit plan? What's the distance notice?
Not currently, no. But, we do keep the plan as a constant review, and obviously we'll take on what the council received today, and obviously it takes account of P&I to themselves.
Paul, can you, where's your position now? Internal audit.
So I can't give you any firm answers today. The original letter that came out in March had a couple of words in there that said, not to paraphrase, but to quote directly, to support areas of challenge and focus. That's what the use of internal audit is in this wider grip and control context. So it doesn't give us much to go on. I guess there's a couple of ways that we've been thinking about how we might interpret that. One is perhaps doing a bit of verification exercise around what's been returned within self-assessment, which is what you kind of alluded to. So that is one area of thinking, with perhaps a little bit of dip testing for perhaps areas, but with greater risk to the organisation. Caveating all that, we don't know what P&I intend to do, whether they intend to do their own verification exercise as well. I don't know yet. We haven't confirmed that. So that'll determine our pathway through. The other thing I'm thinking about is the outcomes from the self-assessment you presented today. Do we look to sort of support and flex our program of work to do something around those what you call opportunities, and maybe do something that picks up those other issues with controls, governance, and risk arrangements in those specific areas? Do something more focused like that. So that's a fairly vague answer, but that's probably where we are at this point in time. Mindful that we probably need to move relatively quickly on it, get a decision. So So collectively, the heads across Wales are meeting, the internal audit heads are meeting next week, and hopefully we'll have another discussion around that and might get some performance improvement feedback at the same time. I don't know, but that's how I'm hoping.
I'm guessing there will be feedback by the director's finance group and putting clarity of what's going to be intended
and in terms of wider context, where we are in discussions with other organisations, we have a brief. I have a brief with one organisation to not agree. It's just something to sort of think about and work on. We've seen self-assessments for a number of health boards, but again, we've not really progressed at this stage and where we are. I think it's really kind of early doors, really. And this is going to land, but it'll have to sort of crystallise fairly soon.
I think it is a comprehensive report. Sorry, I'm going to have to sort of warn you now. Having an ex-DOF as chair of the audit committee is quite dangerous sometimes. So I've actually gone through the documents and I've got certain things I wouldn't feed back to you and help me inform, because there are things where there are gaps in control, in the boxes in terms of controls and assurance. I think we should try and fill in as much as possible. There are a couple of things where I think some things have gone into the assurance column, which I think is in the controls column, and also in the wrong light. So I've got my scribbled notes up, reminding conversation afterwards, and hopefully you'll find them helpful on that, just to tidy it up. So that I think it's important that we get this in there, and we've covered most of the bases. I just saw some of my queries. Sorry, I apologise for that.
No.
I think hopefully it'll be helpful in that context.
Chair, there was just one other thing I meant to mention, which was it might be that where we might have done work quite recently, perhaps last year or back in previous year, on the areas within self-assessment. So it might be that we can lean into some of that assurance work we've already done, so that to avoid replication, duplication of work.
Yeah. And if there is amendments from following our conversations, I think we'll just circulate that to members afterwards. So because we're only being asked to note this one, so we change the so in committee, so they endorse the findings, we'll note the findings, of the self-assessment. I'm quite happy that we endorse the priority areas, and those the reporting back of the actions against those priority areas come back through us. I'm not sure about whether we need to approve, because this year, because you said at the start it was here for information, so I'm not sure if we are approving the submission or these. I don't know. I'm quite happy to approve. We're happy to sort of.
I think we're not. I would be quite happy to endorse on the basis that we've been monitoring and the delivery process in place subsequent.
Subsequent incorporation of the policy you made.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. It is an important piece of work, and no doubt it will evolve as well in terms of completion of everything else. Thank you. Moving on to the Senior Information Risk Officer and reports.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair, for presenting it well. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, papur mwyn cael ei nodi ydi hon. Mae braf fel y saif o cael cyflwyno yr adroddiad blynyddol fel yr uwch berchenog risg gwybodaeth. Mae'n ymarfer da fod ni'n cyflwyno yr adroddiad hwn i'r Pwyllgor yn blynyddol, a bod yr adroddiad wedyn yn mynd ymlaen at bwrdd wedi cael ei nodi. O ran y cynnwys, mae wrth gwrs yn adlewyrchu'r gwaith ar weithbwyll llynedd o ran llywodraeth gwybodaeth, ac yn benodol yn y gwaith da ni'n wneud gydymffurfio gyda'r deddf diogelu data ynghyd â'r deddf rhyddid gwybodaeth. O ran y deddf rhyddid gwybodaeth, mae'n cynnydd y sylweddol wedi bod dros y blynyddoedd diwethaf, yn wir mae'r cynnydd ers 2024-2025 yn gynnydd o 64%. O ran y nifer geisiadau a ystyried llynedd, derbynwyd 82 cais rhyddid gwybodaeth, ac roedd roeddwn ni'n gallu ymateb i 85% o'r rheini o fewn yr amser penodol, sef 20 diwrnod gwaith. O ran y darlun ehangach, mae wedi bod yn flwyddyn o gynnydd ac yn ystiolaeth y fewn yn y adroddiad, yn bod ni wedi gosod seiliau cadarn yn y maes gwrthrydiant gwybodaeth. Mae'r adroddiad hefyd yn amlwg ein blaenoriaethau ar gyfer y flwyddyn yma, ac mae hynny'n cynnwys gwaith lle byddwn ni'n parhau gan bwyntio ar ystoddaeth gwybodaeth, o'n sef diogelwch ac o ran cefnogi staff, sicrhau bod gwybodaeth yn parhau i fod yn saff. Felly, byddwn ni'n gofyn ysgolch na bod y Pwyllgor yn nodi'r adroddiad, ond hefyd yn cadarnhau bod yr adroddiad yn mynd ymlaen i'r bwrdd am ystyried pellach.
Diolch. These are comprehensive reports from my perspective. I think things that we've seen in this report, we've picked up in other reports and forums on here. So, John, do you so?
So I think the report shows, good overall progress on information governance, but again, compliance isn't consistently embedded across the whole of the organisation. I think that's and that's the consistency issue again. It certainly demonstrates a mature governance framework. We've got that, and we've got no reportable breaches, as you rightly said. The one thing, however, that was noticeable was the failure in terms of meeting the training requirement of 85. Now, again, I've raised this at board. We are a learning organisation, we're an education organisation. We previously raised it around PDRs, the duty that we've got to support the learning and development of our staff. And here, again, training seemed to be an issue. The extent of that, I can't quite recall across all groups, but I would certainly, and I'm sure Board Secretary would agree, we need to be endorsing and supporting appropriate training around mandatory information governance training.
Yes, I completely take on all the comments, and it's very disappointing that we haven't hit that target given the nature of the organisation. We are focused on that area. It's a constant piece of work, and we will be the attention that we need to hit that target. We have been reporting on it via the IGIM group, something we are looking at every meeting, and clearly we are looking to improve that figure and hit the target going forward.
So again, I would encourage colleagues to look at how we provide leadership and develop a culture within teams, similar to what you said around risk with regards to information governance, so that it becomes habit, daily process, rather than us having to be monitoring compliance. Because once we get that embedded as a culture of leadership and as a culture within our organisation, I've got a duty with that in terms of that culture, then behaviours become habit, and that becomes a positive habit in terms of this case, information governance.
And I think there's also a broader point of statutory mandatory training and performance against sense. We often look at it on one issue only. Which also previously we talked about the anti-fraud bit. The last board meeting we took a paper on statutory mandatory training, the review programme. And there's a bit about sort of understanding all those trainings and how we perform and how each of the directors perform. And I don't know where that comes together. reports back on what assurance we have as not just audit committee members, but as board members about that overall sort of training position.
Consistency of that journey.
Be useful to, I don't know, it's not for today, but be useful to somewhere that's coming back somewhere.
Certainly it's something that we could pick up on in like a quite detailed in the summary of the IGMG report going forward.
In that regards, then we're asked to note the report for assurance, but in your presentation, it's also don't. It's going to the board as well.
Yes,
so
the intention is that as a part of the summary of this meeting that goes to the board, it will be attached as an appendix and we'll call out specific actions. So
as long as it's then we're asking for that and note it, and it's also noting it to the board as well. That's great. 3.9 complaints annual reports.
That's a hand support. So yn gweld papur blynyddol agig sydd yn adrodd ar y cenedlaethwydd o ran nifer o gwyniad ni wedi derbyn dros y flwyddyn a fi. Da ni'n darparu'r adroddiad blynyddol yn unol a ymarfer da. Mae'r adroddiad blynyddol yn amlinellu'r nifer o gwynion a dderbynwyd dros y blwyddyn diwethaf. Da ni wedi derbyn cyfanswm o 24 o gwynion dros y blwyddyn a fi. Ni gael ni'n hysyn y papur o ran i nifer yna. Mae'r papur yn amlinellu fod nifer o gwynion o ran y cyfran ymateb i'r cwynion o fewn amser, bod y cyfradd yna wedi disgyn eleni. Mae hynny adlewyrchu ffaith bod yna nifer uwch o gwynion yn cael ei derbyn dros y mynyddoedd a fi a gymharu fel blynyddoedd blaenorol. Y newyddion da ydy bod y tîm ymlaen wedi derbyn adnoddau ychwanegol. Bydd yr adnoddau hynny'n cael ei derbyn o mis Medi, mis Hydref ymlaen. Felly dan ni'n gobeithio yn unol ar adnoddau ychwanegol byddwn ni'n gallu gweld cynnydd yn y nifer o gwynion sydd yn derbyn ateb o fewn yr amser penodol. O ran y gwersi, da ni wedi dysgu dros y blwyddyn diwethaf. Yn amlwg, da ni wedi ganolbwyntio ar trio gwella y canran o gwynion sydd yn derbyn ymateb o fewn amser. Da ni hefyd eisiau cyflwyno gynllun gwaith o ran y fforddi y staff o ran sut i fynd ati chwilio gyda gwynion ac ymateb gyda gwynion. Felly dyna ddau ardal yn benodol yn ni'n cysylltu o ran gwella gwynion ar gyfer y blwyddyn sydd i ddod. Felly da ni'n gofyn ysgolch yma fod y pwyllgor yn nodi.
On the reports. Done.
Thank you, Chair. So I note the report and its honesty, and you've addressed, both secretaries addressed some of the issues in terms of only 56% of complaints being responded to within target timescale. So I guess the committee would want to hear what improvements that we should expect as an audit committee 26-27 in order to address complaint performance handling. That would be one. But the other one is, I guess, a broader question, and that relates to given the increased number of complaints that we're getting over the years, and that seems to be increasing each year, we no doubt are able to identify recurring themes within, not looking at specific complaints, but recurring themes. And so what is it that we are doing to look at the root causes of the themes associated with these complaints, as opposed to individual complaints? And, you know, what is the management response around that? So we've got more of a proactive approach to the thematic, or the themes that are associated. So, Chair, my question is in relation to compliance around response rate and the improvements that have been put in place, and how are we looking at the root causes of the themes?
So, with regards to the first part of the question, in terms of improved compliance, obviously it's a much concern that it has dropped significantly this year, but as I say, it does in part reflect the increased number of complaints. I think that in part does reflect the success of our campaign on speaking of safely. I think people are more likely to raise complaints, and they also know who to come to. So I guess in a way that is possibly positive. In terms of increased compliance, as I alluded to earlier, I think there are two elements to that. Obviously now are going to have increased resource, that's going to help. But the increase in number of complaints not only impacted the governance team, we ultimately manage the process, but obviously has an impact on the directorates, in particular the medical and nursing directorates that have had a significant amount of complaints when they are obviously incredibly busy in any event. So in terms of helping and assisting them, hopefully the additional resources within the team will be helpful. But we are going to be introducing training for them in terms of how to undertake an investigation, and hopefully that will speed up the process and make it more straightforward for them to pick up those pieces of work going forward. And that's something that we wanted to do this year, but we're unable to do so because of the lack of resources to get to that. In terms of the second part of your question, in terms of obviously the positive complaints that you were able to spot the issue and learn from it, and hopefully that it's not repeated. We have introduced this year, of course, the recommendations from this committee. We have introduced a tracker to keep track of recommendations and make sure that we are implementing lessons learned. And what we'd like to do this year, I don't think we are taking a step back more broadly, as you've suggested, but that's certainly something that we would want to do this year. And I think that we can take a step back and look to see, are there repetitions, are there lessons to be learned, and we do keep that back more broadly within the team. So thank you for highlighting that. That's something that we need to focus on more going forward. I think another advantage of having an increased number of complaints is that we are now able to identify themes, which is not something we had to do in the past. Thank you.
I have one question, and it's not factual, because on section 4.4 of sector characteristics, and I can understand the process that you have in terms of questionnaires and everything else. There's a question of going forward, will that ever capture the information that you actually need in terms of responsiveness? My question, first of all, is around, is there any essentially then reviewing the complaints to try and see if there was an element of tactic characteristics issues underlying any complaints? No. The second point was when we get to the concerns, there are a couple of concerns relating to discrimination. So is anything of that related to just the tactic characteristics? So it might be something for the future, not for today, but how do we make sure that we are confident that we are picking these things up in here? That's fine factually for last year. This is about going forward.
We are aware, we are recording it. So it is an interesting challenge that where we have identified discrimination, that there relates to concerns, and clearly with regards to concerns, not deemed to be as serious as a complaint. So we will look into that in a bit more detail, but clearly where they've been picked up, they've been resolved very, very quickly. And I guess the question to prima facie and discrimination concern feels instantly to be potentially serious, but we just sense check that. So it's something that we're looking into. Yeah, it is in accordance with the recommendations we're implementing for speaker safety. It is something that we're looking into in much more detail going forward. And what we have introduced this year is that we do send a questionnaire once the complaint's been completed to ask the complainant in terms of their background and whether they have protected characteristics. So that's what we introduced this year. So we're better placed to capture that information. So we've decided to do that after the process so that people don't feel that it would change the way that we would look into the complaints. But I think people don't always respond to that questionnaire, but it's something that we have introduced, and so hopefully the richness of that data will improve going forward.
Okay. There are any questions? Then members are asked to note the contents of the report for information. Okay. The review of committee terms of reference.
Diolch yn fawr iawn Cadeirydd, mae'n rhan ffilmau'n dda yn ddoctor adrodd. Felly, da ni'n gofyn, os gwelwch yna, bydd y Pwyllgor yn adolygu a chytuno ar ei gylch gorchwil. Da ni'n cynnal ymarfer hyn yn flynyddol, yn union â'r ymarfer da. Da ni'n awgrymu rhai fan newidiadau cylch gorchwil eleni, a mae rhain yn ymwneud gyda cadarnhau y tymor penodi o flwyddyn ar gyfer aelodau'r Pwyllgor, ac bod ni diweddaru'r cyfeiriadau at yr adroddiad archwilio cyfrifon, ac yn olaf yn bod ni yn cydnabod o'r diwedd fod llywodraethu gwybodaeth a rheoli gwybodaeth yr IG a IMG yn gys bwyllgor o'r bwyllgor hon. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolch yma bod chi ystyried ac yn cytuno ar newidiadau arfaethedig i'r cylch gorchwil y pwyllgor yma, a bod y newidiadau hynny wedyn yn ymlaen i'r bwrdd i'w cael ei ddiweddaru, ac bod ni'n cael parhau diweddiadau hynny yn ddwygaid yn y bwrdd. Diolch yn fawr.
Questions or comments on the terms of reference?
John, two questions. This is perhaps my preoccupation with terms of reference, which I enjoy reading. Considering the breadth of responsibility of audit and the business of audit, what is the benchmark for co-receipt of independent members? Because this talks about only 2 IMs needed. Now, I suspect I know what you're going to say, but I need to ask the question. And that's, you know, the fact that that could be just chair and one other person, you think, oh, it worked. Is that correct? So therefore, the question is, what does it look like elsewhere in terms of benchmarking? That's my one question. And then the other question, we previously talked about the relationship of this committee with other committees within the organisation, and the need to ensure that we're able to identify overlap or duplication or assurance gaps, etc., etc. So what sort of formal processes have we got in place that we can reflect in the terms of reference to ensure that we've got a mapping, or that we're able to map across committees in terms of that potential overlap or that potential duplication in terms of assurance, particularly now going forward in terms of, you know, the Dawn being chair with the potential chair of the education, that we've had previous conversations around overlap. Do we have a formal process, and should that be reflected in some sort of terms of reference?
Thank you. So, with regards to your first question on benchmarking, I'm not sure what answer you were expecting to give you, but when we set up the committee, it's certainly something we looked at, and we discussed that with the chair, but that goes back many, many years, and I'd have to go back into that. But in terms of reference, reflect, and as far as I'm aware, we'd be consistent with the Observer Committee. We have looked at this, but it goes back many years, and I have to go back to it, but I'm pretty confident that it's fine, because I do remember having discussions with it in the past, but I do take on board your comments. This is a relatively small committee in terms of membership IMs, but then we have relatively small number of IMs and I appreciate. Yeah, and if we have probably one IM missing, it comes as a challenge. Yeah, but I'm happy to look at that again.
So, and that's fine. I think we need to look at it, and don't we get assurance that within accepted standards, then that's absolutely fine. It just jumped out at me. Chair and one person.
Yeah, the alternative would be, because we've been in this position in the past, is that if we did increase the quantity to without raising the number of members, then there's the risk, obviously, that we would be one short, and then we would be appointing a member with short notice. So it's a balance. With regards to your second query, the answer is that when I appreciate when we set up these committees a long time ago, the terms of reference of the audit committee were reasonably straightforward. It does follow the terms of reference of an NHS audit committee. Obviously, it has been amended to reflect the function of this organisation, but it was a reasonably straightforward exercise, and what was more challenging was the creation of terms of reference for the Education, Commissioning and Quality Committee, and it took us, I think, a couple of years to land that correctly, because that committee is unique for the NHS. There's nothing similar, and that was more of a challenge. And in creating both committees, we were very, very aware at the time that we didn't want to have any overlap. And there was also the broad concern that as it's the Education Commissioning Quality Committee, and that we commission over 85% of our expenditure commission, there was a concern that that committee could be a challenge for the board itself in terms of its role. So we were very careful to make sure that both terms of reference are drafted with a view that, in a nutshell, the Education Committee would look at what we're going to do, as opposed to this committee looking at how to do it. Obviously, it's more sophisticated than that, but that's what it boils down to. And within the terms of reference, there is the flexibility that this committee can pass matters on to the Education Committee, and likewise, so can the Education Committee, if we feel that an item would be better considered by either committee. So I have had conversations in terms of I'm not sure it's all well internal audit, but the feedback was that there wasn't any concerns at the time with regards to there being any overlap. It's something that we're constantly reviewing. I can't give a specific example. It has been a concern, or where there was a concern that the flexibility was there to pass that matter on to the Education Committee, of the Education, or vice versa.
And that's fine. So I wonder, I can't recall now, but I just wonder whether note within the terms of reference that processes are in place to enable the flexibility between committees for matters to be referred, etc., might be helpful.
I am certain there is something within the Education Committee. Sometimes I have to check the audit officials. So yeah. So what we feel for is that both committees have followed that reflected. Yes.
I have a question on the new section on terms. Independent members should be appointed for term 1 year. I understand it's to align it with the Education. So yeah. So my question is more of a bit about, I know historically there used to be in the model terms of reference things about the length of term, maximum, and rotation of members on the committee. not for here, which is the NHS audit committees in general per se. So I just wonder whether there is still any guidance on that, because there's a bit about you want a bit of a churn, but also you want a sense of continuity, and the reference to 1 year on is a bit of raises the questions to me on how we're handling that going forward. It's something.
Yes. So my understanding is that within the terms of this, within the terms of model standing policies, there is a reference to term being 1 year, and I think that on a practical basis, what we do is that it's, when we introduce a change to the committee, we will introduce it quite quickly. But then that's mocked up every September. We confirm that that's a year going forward. So just a slight practical note. What's the second question? In terms of the churn, there's no guidance within the model standing orders with regards to churn and ensuring succession, and that I guess there's a risk that somebody could be on this committee too long.
Yeah,
is what you alluded to. Beyond the maximum term of 8 years, I'm not sure it goes into more detail than that, possibly because terms now do have a limit of 8 years, possibly. Yeah, there's no further guidance. But
I may be, my memory might be some really distant guidance when there was an issue. I think you could do a maximum of 3 years, and you would churn over, and it caused problems because often some audit committees did not have sufficient, let's say, expertise on it. I think that genuinely caused problems for them. And maybe that's disappeared in the model, but there was an issue.
Well, it's a really interesting challenge. I've not come across that before. I'm thinking maybe it's superseded by the fact that we have probably a maximum term of 8 years, but I will have a look at that. While highlighting that we've got a reasonably small number of IMs with experience on this area.
Oh no, I totally agree. It's worthwhile exploring. I just wondered, looking at Helen, in terms of good practice on audit committee terms, and is there anything that Audit Wales picked up on, or do you want to actually conscious of this part?
I don't think anything extra is going through them. I can maybe check about the quorum of others, but I suppose David would be in a better position to do that.
I don't think the checking of the quorum yet. I think testing against trusts and SHAs, not rather than Hellish, because they got much bigger board membership anyway, type thing, isn't it? And,
I would look at both. There's also the product guides that follow as well. So we'll come back to that.
Thank you. So we are asked to review and agree the terms of reference. Yes, we're happy to. Yeah, thank you. Moving on to the audit recommendation tracker.
Diolch fawr iawn. Adroddiad yn gofyn am ystyriaeth a cymeradwyaeth ydy hon. Felly, yn yr adroddiad, mae'n cadarnhau bod yna 9 argymhelliad ar tracio archwilio ar hyn o bryd. O ran argymhellion o'r archwilio mewnol, mae'n gyfanswm o 5 argymhelliad, ac mae 1 cael ei ystyried yn goch a 4 cael ei ystyried yn amber. O ran yr argymhelliad sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n goch, mae hwn yn ymwneud gyda platform newydd ar gyfer rheoli hyfforddeuon a'r codi. O ran yr archwiliad allanol, mae'n gyfanswm o 4 argymhelliad. Mae 1 wedi cael ei asesu'n goch, 2 yn amber ac 1 yn wyrdd. O ran yr argymhelliad coch, mae hwn yn ymwneud gyda gyflyniad fod agig yn cyfathrebu gyda'r rhanddeiliad am effaith bwysau ariannol ar cynnal adwiliad gweithlu ar gyfer dyfodol. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgol yma fod y pwyllgor ystyried yn cynnydd amaethwyd o ran y cynnwyd a fu, ac cymeradwyo fod yr argymhellion sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n wyrdd yn cael ei ddynnu i ar y traciwr. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. The comments or question? I just have one relating to the single lead employer. It makes reference to this remains depends on ongoing discussions then services and implementation of this doctor's contract with support system development, and the target still August. To me, that sounds optimistic. So, what is that?
I would agree, Chair. I think that's currently the likely list. A bit of that is that there have been discussed with Retro and SMBs, shared services. They've shared KPIs. There's still discussion going on with the further meeting plan for September, which we may agree with those KPIs. Once those have been agreed, then we can understand what is covered. So we have to wait for that dependency to be completed before we work. So I agree that August is unlikely. Stage maybe the second one.
We'll just note that, and the next version will have a probably slightly different date on the tracker. But I have no other questions on that. So committee's asked to note the report, consider the progress, and then approve that the recommendations, findings that have been assessed and completed, given the green rating, are withdrawn from the tracker. Thank you. Moving on to corporate risk register.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly papur i'w nodi ydy hon ar y gofrest y risg corfforaethol. Fel ydych chi'n gallu gweld, mae yna 9 risg ar y gofrestr ar hyn o bryd. Mae 7 hyn yn asesu'n goch a 2 yn amber. O ran y risgiau coch, mae rhain yn ymwneud gyda seifr ddiogelwch. Meddygon cydymmaeth NPAs, capacity, y tîm data a dadansoddi, cynllid y sector addysg uwch, y swyddi gwag ar gyfer arwedigion, a mae yna 2 risg coch newydd, a mae'r cyntaf o'r blaen newydd yn ymwneud gyda'r contract newydd ar gyfer doctoriaid a deintyddion preswyl. Ac yn olaf, mae yna risg coch newydd sy'n ymwneud gyda sicrhau cyllid ychwanegol gan Llywodraeth Cymru ar gyfer codi, felly papur ein nodi os fod yna.
General sort of observation, really, because I found myself broadly comfortable with this risk scores, but I know I've raised this before. I'm less convinced of the narrative that it always supports the scores. Because when I was reading a few of them, the ones that sort of really jump back, I find myself asking 3 questions really. What has changed? What happens next? And when do we expect that risk to begin reducing? So I just wondered if future reports we can give some thought to strengthen the narrative around the expected trajectory of each risk, as opposed to how it is.
Yeah, we're happy to. I mean, one of the recommendations from the audit was that to be clear in terms of dates, but I'll report that back to the team and we'll look to that going forward for that would help.
Just a couple of comments. Recognising that we've received this last week in the board as reports changes really. On the data analytics team capacity and capability, there's an assessment and it says a scores increased. I understand that. Then it talks about mitigations, but then it says it's been increased. So I'm not sure if the mitigations are there to bring it. Is it just stabilising at this point in time, or what have you? It's given that we've received the last week, given there's going to be discussions on data until the board dividing session, maybe further work may be required for the next iteration of the corporate risk register, but I'm not sure where we stand on this one.
So we've had staff leaving the station, which are quite good jets. The risks have been raised due to the challenges that presented on the workload on the team. With that, you might expect the team was going to go through a recruitment process. There's supposed to be risk there as they're quite specialist skills and can be quite hard to come by. So until we've pointed into that kind of stuff, matching risk with very hard mitigations during the first individual. All that looks like you're doing is to see how the recruitment is.
That's fine.
Thank you for that.
The second question I had was about the CODI. Has a business case been submitted to Welsh Government?
I have discussions with Welsh governments regularly about subjects not to my law that planning, business case development. They're aware of the outline figures, but they require us a full justification case. That said, we are near completion of that case. That needs to go through our executive team, which is case is not fully finished yet since almost final draft stage. It's possible that could go in August. It might be early September for workers through executive team. Once we agree that, will then go on to Welsh Government. There are multiple meetings with Welsh Government on the subject. Excellent. Thank you. No other questions on here?
No, I've got a question, Chair, but if I can just make a comment. When you look at the risk register overall, what it shows is that the position of HIW, the risk profile is deteriorating. You know, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But when you look at that, that is often because we're operating within far more challenging environment, and that a lot of these risks remain outside our direct control. So it does present, when you read it, you think, gosh, this is getting worse each time, which is it, and it's a deteriorating position. But it conveyed to me the landscape that is around us. And often these risks are sitting elsewhere. HEIs, you know, working with other organisations to deliver certain things. So, not that that is a means of reassurance, but it means we're able to explain where we are.
Yeah. To me, it's an honest reflection
Yes,
of the risks that we operate in, and it is a much more challenging environment. So
absolutely. It's not a question, just an observation. Correct.
Thank you, John. Thanks for that reflection. So the committee is asked to note the contents of the report for assurance. Thank you. Part 4, for information, there's nothing there. Part 5, nothing has been raised with me in regards to any other business. Has anything come through? No. So the date and next meeting is on the 8th of October. We'll be here and online. And then in accordance with the provisions of section 1 of the Public Bodies and Commissions and Meetings Act, to be resolved that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the latter part of the meeting on the grounds it would be prejudicial to the public interest due to the confidential nature of the business transaction. This section of the meeting is to be held in private session. Thank you.